Hey viewers, in this video I'm going to be going through how I built my Demon Slayer inspired guitar. It's a semi-hollow custom build and I've officially dubbed it Gyutaro. For the design inspiration coming from Demon Slayer, it's actually from one episode specifically. It's when Gyutaro and Lord Uzuis are fighting in season 3. And pretty much what happens is Gyutaro throws a bunch of rotating slashes, it throws Lord Uzuis back and he deflects everything before he attacks again. You can see I threw parts of that scene directly into this guitar. I have a bunch of rotating slashes starting in the guitar body. I actually threw them all the way up the neck as well. And on the headstock, I actually used Lord Uzuis' sword as a template for the design. Even though it's a headless guitar, I still want to have the headstock in there just for that overall guitar look. So let's get this build process started. So for a complex build like Gyutaro, I'm not going to be cutting into the exotic wood first. Instead, I'm going to be utilizing templates. Now for these templates, I'm going to be using a 1/2 inch plywood. This is both easy to shape and it's also going to be reducing the risk. So any miscuts I perform will now be completed on the templates rather than a costly exotic piece of wood. Once these individual templates are completed for the various layers, I'm going to be using a flush trim router bit to perfectly transfer this image on to the expensive piece of exotic wood. The first piece of wood we're going to work on is some walnut. It has a lot of voids in there. I'm going to stabilize it later and I'll show you how I get that done. I'm first going to be cutting it into the proper dimensions, ensuring I have a 90-degree cut everywhere. And then I'm actually going to cut it down the middle of the piece of wood and I'm going to open it up to book match the same grain pattern on both sides. This is going to be for the base of the guitar and for the middle section. Now when I was selecting the type of wood for this guitar, I wanted some wood with a lot of character. The problem with wood with a lot of character is it typically comes from ingrown burl wood, and that doesn't have a lot of stability to it. So I had a nice piece of walnut that was grown on a farm, and there's a lot of sections with burls in there where it weakened the structural integrity of the wood, and I have that throughout the neck and the body. To strengthen this wood, I actually use a 2-part epoxy with black tint, and it seamlessly transitions into the grain pattern that's already in the walnut and it gives you a fantastic finish. This is the same type of epoxy that you'll see on a lot of the river table videos on Instagram and YouTube, and it ensures that there's a 3-day set time. It allows the epoxy to flow into all the voids and cracks and penetrate into the wood. If you just use a standard off-the-shelf couple dollar epoxy, it's very opaque, it'll set too quickly and it won't properly adhere to the surrounding material. Now for the maple top, I'm actually going to be creating a different template than what I was using for the maple base on the bottom. You can see that it reduces in size as it comes forward. By creating these different templates, I will be reducing the amount of shaping I have to do for this curvature by hand at the later stages of the build. Now with the exterior templates of the guitar on the finished pieces of wood, I need to turn my attention towards how I'm going to hollow out this guitar. I'm going to be using a similar process using the same templates, but now I'm going to ensure I have at least a ½ inch overlap between the individual layers, and I'm going to begin to hog out the material on the inside of the templates and use the same process of using a flush trim router bit and transferring on those template designs onto the pieces of wood I've already cut. To minimize the stress on the router flush trim bit, I'm first going to hog out the material using a Forstner bit on the drill press. So a similar process to create 3 separate exterior templates, I need to create 3 separate interior templates as well. The bottom layer and the top layer are slightly unique as I don't want the template to protrude all the way through. I'm just going to be lowering down the blade approximately 1/4 inch to reduce the weight of the overall guitar while still maintaining a solid base. Now before I glue up the layers, I'm going to be taking this opportunity to use a router and install a dado through the lowest layer of that guitar. This is going to be a channel that will accept the wiring at the latest stages of this build. By planning early enough, I'm saving myself a lot of grief later on. I forgot one more step before I actually glue the layers together. I need to cut out the semi-hollow openings in the front of the guitar, the access ports in the back of the guitar that will assist with the wiring, along with the guitar neck on the top template that I can use to transfer onto the lower layers after the glue up is complete. To cut the openings in the face of the wood, I'm going to be drilling in some holes in the approximate design before I take it over to the scroll saw. Drilling the holes is very important. It helps to relieve the stress of the scroll saw. It also gives me access points to install the scroll saw blade through the openings and cut towards the next drill point. I'm also going to be using this opportunity to sand off and smooth those curvatures on the face of the guitar. Now during the glue up, there is a risk that the individual layers will shift from one another when you apply the pressure of the clamps. So to mitigate this, I'm going to be installing a dowel through the bottom 3 layers and then separately through the top 2 layers. Now when I apply that pressure, the dowel will ensure that everything stays perfectly lined up with each other, and when I remove the clamps, everything will be perfectly lined up and I'll minimize the amount of waste I have on this guitar. So because I used epoxy early on to stabilize the walnut pieces, I can no longer use carpenter's glue since it will not adhere to those epoxy sections. So as a substitute, I'm going to be utilizing some polyurethane glue in between the layers. Okay, so now we're in our spray booth, and for this guitar I'm going to be using an Osmo hardening wax on the exterior. However, before I glue on that top layer to the bottom 3 layers, I need to ensure I properly seal the wood on the inside. Now, using a hand applied method is very difficult to actually reach in there and properly apply it across the surface. By using a sealer in the spray gun, I'm able to douse the entire interior of the guitar, and it will allow the sealer to penetrate inside all these nooks and crannies that would be difficult to reach by hand. Before I place the sealer, I need to tape off the glue joint in between the bottom 3 layers and that top layer to ensure that no sealer penetrates to create a stronger bond. Now, to complete the large concave sweeps in the guitar, I'm going to be using this hand curve rest. Now, this has been a game changer for me, especially completing these types of curves. Before I had to use power tools, it wasn't very consistent, and I had a high risk of gouging out more material than I initially wanted to. Now, with this piece of equipment, I have a lot of control, and I'm able to take long sweeping motions across. So I have a consistent surface across while giving me an adjustable concave based off of the angle I complete the sweeping motion in. Now the guitar body is complete and ready for assembly, I'm going to start working on the neck. Now the neck is going to be a total of 9 layers. I'm once again going to be using curly maple and stabilized walnut, but the difference in this neck compared to the body is I'm going to add thin strips of wenge to create a larger contrast between the pieces of wood. Okay, so now I have the neck laminated and perfectly 90 with one another. I have to begin the installation for this truss rod. Now, over time, the tension in the string caused the neck to want to bow inwards. This truss rod will have an adjustable end and it allows you to counteract the stresses caused by the strings. The important thing for the installation of the truss rod is it has to fit very snugly in between the neck to the fretboard above. So, I have a router bit and the curvature is exactly 1/4 inch, which matches the diameter of my truss rod. Once I install this on the router, I'm going to be taking multiple passes until the top of this bar will sit perfectly flush against the future fretboard on top of the neck. With the neck complete, I'm going to begin work on the fretboard. When I was using one of the cut-off pieces from my initial guitar body, I had this one burl with a great natural arc, and this resembled the rotating circular slashes I was discussing earlier on in my video. To make the fretboard more complex, I actually added additional rotating slashes using a scroll saw and black epoxy. Once I use the fretboard template to transfer the final design onto the piece of wood, I still need to transfer over these individual fret markings. So I'm going to transfer on these lines onto my finished walnut piece of wood, and then I'm going to be using this Japanese handsaw with 2 blocks to ensure I keep it perfectly 90 degrees, and I'm going to cut in grooves that will accept the frets at a later time. Similar to using dowels on the guitar body earlier, I'm also going to repeat that process to ensure that the fretboard and the neck don't slip when the clamp pressure is applied. Now that the fretboard is firmly attached to the neck, I can complete a rough cut of the neck below. This is just going to be within a couple of centimeters from where I need it to be, just so I can minimize the amount of material I remove next. With the fretboard installed, I have to create wings on the headstock area that can accept the template I made earlier for the Lord Uzuis swords. Using a sanding radius block, I'm going to put a radius on top of the fretboard. Okay, so to begin shaping the neck, I'm going to be using a Shinto serrated teeth rasp. This allows you to remove material without clogging up, so it's ideal for shaping a guitar neck, especially when you're removing a lot of material. So to begin this process, I'm going to be shaping the 2 extremes of the guitar neck, and once I have those to the rough shape, I'm going to be taking long sweeps across the entire span of the guitar until I get that perfect transition across. Once I'm complete with the Shinto rasp, I'm then going to be using a piece of sandpaper, tensioning it over top of the guitar neck, and just going up and down across until I get that nice equal curvature throughout the guitar neck. Okay, so now this is a very important step, a very fun step. We're going to be attaching the guitar body to the guitar neck. From this point on, it's going to look like a physical guitar. So, very important first step is to ensure that everything lines up perfectly from the guitar body in this direction towards the guitar neck. To do that, I'm going to be using this template and I'm going to be placing the individual pieces and lining it up before I attach this template with the guitar opening over top of the guitar body. An important step in this process is to remember that the guitar neck is going to be running at a 2 to 3 degree slope off of the guitar body so it can suspend over the pickups. To gather this slope, I've actually incorporated that into the template I'm using on the guitar body. I cut 2 separate shims at 2.5 degrees. Now when it sits on the guitar body with the template, the cutting head will actually run at that same degree slope, and it should perfectly accept that neck and have the slope already built in. So to ensure I don't have any sharp edges from the edges of the fret where they meet the neck, I created this simple jig. It's just a 2x4 with a 45-degree cut on the inside of it. In that 45-degree cut, I put a simple rasp, and now I run the top of the 2x4 across the top of the neck, and this rasp will create a 45-degree chamfer across the entire length of the fretboard. Before you begin dressing the frets, make sure that you put some painter's tape across the entire neck so you don't damage any of the finished wood. You can't resand that, or it'd be very difficult at least to resand that. Okay, time for the best part of this build, applying the Osmo oil finish to this guitar. Previous projects I've used a polyurethane finish, but I switched it up specifically for this project as I really want to show off the character of the wood, and the Osmo oil is the perfect finish to do that. It has both a great feature on the stabilized walnut along with the curly maple top. So for the hardware, I actually used headless guitar components. I still kept the headstock just because I like the look, but now you can adjust the guitar tuning from the bottom rather than on top. It's a lot easier while you're playing to adjust it on the go. It gives you a lot more maneuverability, and really, I just like the look a lot better. Thanks for watching this video on how I put together this guitar. Now, don't quote me on this. I think this might be the first semi-hollow headless design that I've personally ever seen. If you do know of others, be sure to let me know in the comment section below. This will be a submission for the Great Guitar Build Off 2023 Scratch Build Competition, so we'll see how I do on that. But besides that, it's a guitar I really enjoyed. Made it from one of my favorite TV shows, Demon Slayer. If you do enjoy it and you want to see some more content that I build, please be sure to subscribe, hit that alert button, and like this video.